Thanks for joining us. Kelda is away tonight. An afternoon fire in Markham tore through a home. 2 people managed to escape, but a third person was killed. Tonight, both fire officials and police are working together. Anam Khan takes us there.
A house fire in rural Markham alarming the neighborhood.
For our municipality, this is unusual. It's a fatal fire. We're fortunate we don't often have fatal fires.
Deputy Fire Chief Matt Kay says crews arrived at the house on Reesa Road Monday afternoon, finding a man in his 60s dead inside. Police say 2 people managed to get out of the house uninjured. Kay says fire crews were busy fighting another fire in Thornhill at the same time, so Toronto fire trucks came to help.
This is a rural area, which means there are no fire hydrants. So Toronto Fire came up, brought their tanker as well as other municipalities to assist us in getting water to put the fire out.
The deputy fire chief tells me there was a little bit of fire in the bedroom and in the attic, and crews responded quickly and were able to get it under control. The fire chief tells me there was no structural damage, but there was significant smoke in the bedroom. From the outside, you can see the shattered glass of the bedroom window. Kay says the incident drew a lot of concern from the neighbors. Some neighbors CBC spoke to were too upset to speak on camera.
I've answered a lot of questions about fire prevention today. A lot of the questions are, how could I avoid this happening to me? We've spoken a lot about smoke alarms, which do save lives, and practicing an exit.
Police says the cause of the fire is unknown and an investigation is ongoing.
Our investigators will be working along with the fire marshal to determine if there's any criminality involved in this incident, and really just sort of piece together the sequence of events that led up to this fire occurring and sadly the death of that adult man.
Police say they have not yet identified the man and hope to notify his next of kin as soon as possible. Anam Khan, CBC News, Markham.
Calls for accountability tonight after a pro-Palestinian demonstration over the weekend turned violent. Organizers say Toronto police are using increasing excessive force at the rallies. Today, a group gathered outside police headquarters to share their stories. Dale Manukdek has more from them, plus how police are responding.
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
We will continue to fill the streets day by day as we fight for our people back home in Gaza.
Speaking at a press conference outside Toronto Police headquarters, several people addressed the crowd of about 50 people, including this man. His eye still blackened, an injury he says happened while being assaulted by police.
Let him go!
A video snippet captured on Saturday shows officers lifting him to his feet. Here's what he says happened before.
And I was grabbed by my head, pushed over the police line, forcibly thrown to the ground, and I just felt several bodies on top of me, beating me, punching me, kicking me. I was not resisting. I was not a threat.
He says he spent hours in police custody for allegedly assaulting an officer, a victim he says cops couldn't produce.
I was then told after the fact that there was no evidence of a crime, there was no victim whatsoever, yet I was still in the back of a police van awaiting and being charged with something that there was no evidence for.
He isn't facing any charges. Neither is Salim Elawa, who says he was also taken down by police.
When I was de-escalating the situation, I was grabbed by the police officer from behind and assaulted. Then I was surrounded by 3 officers who tackled me so hard to the ground that my hearing aid fell out. The officer then stepped on my hearing aid.
On Saturday, police arrested 7 people. 3 were released unconditionally. 1 man was turned over to the OPP for an unrelated matter. 1 man was arrested for allegedly operating a truck with occupants in the bed while it was in motion, considered stunt driving in accordance with the Highway Traffic Act.
Hands off the Middle East!
But that is something that demonstrators have been doing all along.
Toronto police suddenly, out of the blue, became very concerned for our road safety. Truly, kudos to the Toronto police for following someone's orders.
Police, though, say they've been warning demonstrators for months that this would not be tolerated. Meanwhile, 2 women are each facing a charge of assaulting an officer with a weapon, one for allegedly throwing horse manure at officers, and another for allegedly using a flagpole to attack a cop.
The Toronto police has no credibility. They are liars, and what they say cannot be trusted.
This organizer referencing a police takedown last December. Video shows officers putting a knee on the neck and head of a man and stomping on his glasses. Police said at the time it reviewed all available footage, and at no time did an officer place a knee on the suspect's neck.
I do not trust the accounts of the Toronto police. I trust the accounts of my community members who have come out and said the Toronto police arrested them for quote unquote assaulting officers, when in reality they came back and said no victim could be found.
The people who spoke today also say that a man was arrested who was just a neighborhood resident. They say that police racially profiled him as part of the demonstration. Now, police would not speak to that individual allegation. They declined our request for an interview today, instead pointing to a statement released yesterday that says the necessary and appropriate force was used to preserve public and officer safety. The Police Association also commenting via statement saying that they expect the same respect that they extend to protesters. Dale Munukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
Taking you to Leaside next, where neighbors were stunned to see a massive police presence as officers search for a gunman wanted in connection to a shooting. It happened in the quiet and upscale neighborhood near Bayview and Moore just after 8 a.m. The victim is a man in his 50s. He was found suffering from gunshot wounds. Police say he was taken to hospital in serious condition. At one point, officers asked people in the area to shelter in place as they searched for a suspect, but so far, no one has been found. Witnesses say after the shooting, they saw a blue SUV leaving the area. And Toronto police are asking for your help tracking down a man wanted for an alleged kidnapping. Police say 33-year-old Curtis Beckles abducted a victim early Sunday afternoon and sexually assaulted her at an address near Kingston Road and Rockwood Drive. Now, she managed to escape while the suspect was driving in that vehicle, a black 2020 Hyundai Tucson. Beckles is wanted for kidnapping, assault, and forcible confinement. Anyone with information is asked to contact police. If you had to fill the tank today, it likely cost you more. That's because of a bump to the federal carbon tax officially kicking into effect. But as Greg Ross shows us, it's not all bad news.
It wasn't a welcome sight for many filling up their cars today.
I think that's a bit too much on average person like me. You know, we're not seeing any increase in our salaries or our pay. So when this happens, it really does affect a lot of us.
It's really frustrating. For me, I don't know, I drive from Kitchener for work here. So I don't know, like it's gonna affect me really hard.
These commuters were not happy about having to pay an extra 3.3 cents per liter for gas. But the Prime Minister is standing by his government's carbon tax, which is driving up gas prices.
We are effective in putting a price on pollution that is driving down emissions.
Trudeau says it's not just the price of gas that is going up.
The price on pollution is increasing along with the Canada carbon rebate.
Households in Ontario can expect larger quarterly rebates from the carbon tax. The federal government says for most it means more money in their pockets, but it isn't having that impact on everyone. Some people who rely on their vehicles to earn a living tell us that the carbon tax has had a huge impact on their bottom line.
I drive Uber, so it's going to be very costly for me. We are not getting any raise in the fares, but we are getting raise in the gas prices, and it's surely hitting our earnings also.
Some say it's something the government may need to take a closer look at.
Who is actually not getting more back? Who's not getting enough back that it's hurting their bottom line? And I think that those are tweaks that the government should absolutely explore making as the carbon price ramps up.
This political science professor at the University of Toronto says while the concept is not perfect, it's already having a positive impact, with Canada's carbon emissions starting to shrink.
Estimates show that from the Canadian Climate Institute that the carbon tax should help generate about 50% of Canada's emissions reductions by 2030.
That's when Canada has committed to reducing carbon emissions to 30% less than 2005 levels through the Paris Agreement. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
In 1 week, all eyes will be on the sky for the total solar eclipse. Several Ontario cities have been working for weeks getting ready for potentially record-sized crowds so big, one region is declaring a state of emergency. Clara Pasica explains.
This familiar to many Ontarians tourist spot has declared a state of emergency in advance of crowds expected to flock to see much more than the great wonder of the world that is Niagara Falls. The state of emergency was declared by the region in anticipation of 1 million people expected to take in the eclipse a few days from today.
It's out of an abundance of caution, A, and B, they want to be able to have access to funds provincially and federally if it's necessary. Obviously, we're going to bring in a lot of extra police and fire and ambulance and bylaw people, and there'll be a lot of extra people, all hands on deck for that day. It'll be the biggest crowd in Niagara Falls ever in the history of the city. There'll be upwards of 1 million people.
But declaring an emergency, a move which technically comes with the power to do things like imposing a curfew or rationing goods or services, has experts divided.
And I don't see how a large amount of people arriving on the face of it warrants a state of emergency declaration.
He says even doing so sets a dangerous precedent.
Emergency power should be used sparingly. And if it's not, then you have a situation where the civil liberties of individuals are affected.
But this expert says it is justified, pointing to places in the United States in the path of totality that have done the same.
If a type of emergency happened which needed a quick infusion of additional funding or additional support to bring in or upgrade critical infrastructure, rather than going through a typical bureaucratic process, which would take time, the state of emergency would allow for a quick facilitation of actions to be taken to respond to the crisis.
Locals aren't completely sure what to think, but some say it's good to have something in place.
Well, I heard about it and I read about it, and I actually think it's a good idea. I mean, I think they're expecting over 1 million people. I mean, that's, you know, you look around here now, it's empty. I think it's going to be chock-a-block with people, and I think that puts risk at, you know.
I'm worried about crowd response to things. Does that make sense? Yeah, I would say that if everything goes great, we don't need a state of emergency, but if we do, it's better to have everybody on hand.
But will calling it an emergency keep some tourists away?
From our perspective as the destination marketing organization, we're more interested in sort of the state of excitement. It's unfortunate the terminology has to be a state of emergency. If I could give advice anywhere, I'd say please, in future, can we look at changing that to preparedness funding or something that takes the edge off of an emergency? Because we see it truly as a day of true excitement and fun and people sharing, people learning.
Where I'm standing right now is expected to look very different in just a few days' time, filling with people. And emergency or not, we'll see if the region did what was needed. Clara Pasica, CBC News, Niagara Falls.
They say all good things must come to an end, and sadly that's the case for a Toronto institution. The Black Bull Tavern will pour its last pint this Wednesday after a nearly 200-year run. Patrick Swadden dropped by and has more on what regulars will miss and what they love most about the iconic bar.
Question: do you remember what you were doing in the year 1833? Perhaps you were messaging some friends using Morse code? No, you weren't. Not even Morse code was invented yet when the Black Bull Tavern opened its doors to Toronto nearly 2 centuries ago.
Sitting at 298 Queen West, the local watering hole is a monument to longevity.
How long have you been coming here?
Since the 1980s.
It's been a grand time, and actually had to make this a pilgrimage is what I called it. We had to be here.
And for good friends Alan Roy and Jeff Good, it's a place they've made countless memories over the years.
It's a chance to catch up in a space that's comfortable, and it welcomes everyone. There's no sense of barrier, and I love that too.
The owners say it once served pints to vibrant punk rockers and biker gangs.
People come in from the States, and their parents tell them to come to the Black Bull when they're visiting here because their parents visited here when they were kids. So
the owner's decision to move on comes after Bobby Taylor, a Canadian football legend who purchased the bar in 1975, died last year. Asked what patrons will miss most, many say the staff, like bartender Sheldon Chow, who's worked here for over 40 years.
I sit here and Sheldon brings it to me.
While some lament the loss of long-standing independent establishments.
You know, it was a great hangout. Now it's mostly commercial.
The reason that we come downtown is for places like this. And now that they're building up and out, we don't have places like this anymore.
The local BIA hoping that as the Black Bull meets its Matador, the neighborhood preserves its iconic character.
This is an amazing premium patio, so I hope whoever moves into it treats it really well and knows that it's one of the best in the city.
While ownership is changing hands, a heritage property designation means it won't be torn down to make condos.
That building is so iconic. It has a lot of architecture from, centuries ago that the city has put a mandate to make sure that it's preserved.
And while the building lives on, an historic chapter comes to a close.
Your last chance to grab a pint or some fish and chips at the Black Bull Tavern will be this Wednesday, April 3rd. Patrick Swadden, CBC News, Toronto.
You're looking live at our city tonight, partly cloudy, 9 degrees out there. Colette Kennedy joining us now. Colette, we have to talk about the special weather statement for a bit of a stormy wallop on the way. But first, can we just pause and take a moment and appreciate today?
Yeah, you know it. What a beautiful way to be coming off the holiday weekend with such gorgeous conditions. And I really, really hope folks enjoyed it because we have some major changes coming in the forecast too. So we'll dive into all of that. But let's just have a little recap. In many cases, the 11s had it in Ottawa, 11 Toronto up to 11 St. Catharines as well. And Windsor, although the winds from the north in the afternoon were a little bit breezy. But how about London? Shout out to you, 12. And we cannot leave our friends in Oshawa out. 13 degrees there for the daytime high. Overnight tonight in Toronto, mostly cloudy skies. We've got those clouds increasing, pretty mild for an overnight low, but rain moves in for tomorrow, especially for the second half of the day. The winds will be picking up to a high of 7. And for Windsor, overnight tonight, you'll have that rain already beginning. The winds picking up by tomorrow morning and getting not only quite strong, but by afternoon and early evening, a chance of some thunderstorms rolling through as well. So, okay, what is the big weather maker that's causing all these things? And that's going to be sticking around for a few days. Well, here it is coming into the Ohio Valley as we go through the overnight and pushing into southwestern Ontario by tomorrow morning. There will be some pockets with some heavier rain at times. Those winds really ramping up. And then it pushes in, especially by afternoon. We could have showers earlier, but by afternoon into the GTA and to the north. You can see there's some mixing because of it pulling in some colder air. That's going to ride in. Then another batch rolls through. I mentioned the thunderstorm risk tomorrow afternoon and early evening in southwestern Ontario. How about overnight Tuesday into Wednesday? So maybe in those overnight hours, if you're a light sleeper, you might get that rumble of thunder coming on through. Into Wednesday, we'll still have some periods of rain. I'm switching over. This may look a little bit strange, but at this point, 7 a.m. Wednesday, I'm switching over to a different model because I want to extend this and show you how the cold air is going to pull in. And we'll see by Wednesday night, this changing over to a situation with some even light wet snow coming into the GTA closer to the lakeshore. The winds are going to be a factor here, especially tomorrow evening as they ramp up coming through the Golden Horseshoe. Rainfall accumulations, keeping in mind eventually this will become snow, and to the north it's more snow, but we are looking at that's just through Wednesday early evening, 30 to 50 millimeters of rain. Through Toronto, tomorrow's high 7. This lasts through about Thursday, and then we're starting to come out of it on Friday for the Windsor area, essentially the same in terms of that timeline. So some very active weather coming our way this week.
Going to be a bumpy few days. Thanks, Colette. Before we go, you're about to meet an 87-year-old man from Markham who just earned a Guinness World Record for being the oldest man to receive a kidney transplant. Talia Ricci brings us his story.
Guinness World Records certificate. The oldest kidney transplant recipient. I applied for surgery of a kidney transplant year before. I was put on the waiting list. Suddenly I got a call, I got a clinic, come to the hospital. And same night, they operated me. They told me I should not do this operation. It's risky. You are 87. Anything may go wrong, you may die at the table, you have a blah, 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 blah. I said, I don't care. The dialysis is killing me. I don't want dialysis. So I took a chance. On the table, the operation time, they again asked me, do you want to go through this? I said, yes. I just closed the eyes and stayed there. After 6 hours, I woke up. I was fine.
What do your kids think? Like, what have they been saying to you? Were they worried when you were going into surgery?
I didn't tell them I'm going to surgery. I said I'm going to go for a test.
You didn't tell your kids. Why?
Because they were worried.
They were worried.
Yeah. If I go, I go.
Were they upset that you didn't tell them?
They were, but too late. Too late.
And it worked out okay?
Yeah.
What did the doctors say to you? Were they surprised? Were they saying, I've never seen anything like this before?
They're all excited over there. When I go there, they all clap me, they all talk to me.
Coupled with his good health was the fact that he seemed to be extraordinarily determined. We had a number of conversations about all of the potential complications that might happen, and that a transplant could actually shorten his life. But he was very determined. He went through all the tests that were asked of him, attended all his appointments, and just really, really wanted this transplant. And so I got a sense that he was going to do well afterward.
And so do you feel now like you have, like you were given a second chance at life?
Yes, I can do a lot of things now, which I couldn't do it before. When you go to dialysis, you always go every other day and you're very tired. You couldn't do nothing. Now I can do something.
Walter, congratulations. We're all wishing you many healthy and happy years ahead. Well, that is our show for you tonight. Thanks so much for watching. Dwight is back with you again tomorrow night at 6. We'll see you soon.